I've secured over $150,000 in business funding for my business in a very short period of time. This is how I did it. Stick till the end because I'm going to share with you how half of that funding was done with just one play. I got $75,000 in just one play. So let's roll this back to August of 2020 when I started my software startup. As of recent, the business has not been panning out the way that I wanted it to. I had a really high, and now I had a really big crash and burn. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is I learned a lot of skills in business running that business. I learned how to manage people. I learned advertising. I learned marketing, sales, and funding, which is what we're going to go over here. So from August of 2020, specifically March of 2021, when I really started taking the business seriously and I got my first business credit card, all the way up until around a month ago, I was able to secure over $150,000 in business funding. I believe it was $166,000 to be exact, and I'm gonna give the breakdown later so you'll see exactly how much I got in business funding over the span of these 2 years, because now we're in March of 2024. I did this in March of 2021, so you get the picture. So the exact amount of funding that I've been able to secure since August of 2020 until now has been about $166,000. To be perfectly honest with you, I could have secured a lot more than this, but I had a little bit of a stop loss in my head because I didn't want to take on too much debt, too much leverage, and at a certain point, again, the business wasn't doing too well, so I kind of slowed myself down. But honestly, $500,000 would have been possible in my position. And to be perfectly clear, about $100,000 of this business funding was 0% interest credit cards, and the other $50,000 to $60,000 was low interest products, lines of credit, and things of that nature. Oh, and lastly, all of this funding was with no documentation whatsoever. When I say no doc, I mean no bank statements, no tax returns, or any other proof of income. The only documentation that they may have possibly asked me for was my ID, front and back, proof of EIN, and proof of my articles of organization. That's it. And if you want business funding and you are a US citizen, you most likely have those three things. So let's go over exactly how I was able to secure this funding. Number one, you need to make sure that you have immaculate personal credit. I started the business in August of 2020, but I didn't really start taking it seriously until around March of 2021. And that is when I opened my first bank account with Chase Bank, and I secured my first business credit card at 0% interest. Now, at the time, I didn't really know much about business credit, so I was only able to get a $3,000 limit because I didn't know the exact funding strategies that I needed to know at the time to get the maximum amount of funding. But because I had immaculate credit, even though I didn't put the right things that I was supposed to on the application, I was still able to get approved, although it was for a lower amount. Now, let me break down exactly what I mean by immaculate credit. I had a very low amount of inquiries, and the only thing that may have been holding me back at the time was my average age of credit was pretty low because I only had 4 personal credit cards. They're right here. You can see them, I'm trying to cover the numbers. They were the Chase Freedom Unlimited, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, I had a Best Buy credit card, and I had a Discover It card, which was my first credit card ever, and I got this one in 2015. So this one was anchoring the age of my credit up, as well as the Chase Freedom Unlimited, which I got in 2018, which was also anchoring it up. Now, the Chase Sapphire Reserve was brand spanking new at the time. I think it was when I got that card. The business card, it was 2 months old. And the Citibank card, or the Best Buy Citibank card, I believe was like 3 to 4 years old. So that one was also slightly anchoring it up. The only new credit card I had basically at the time was the Sapphire Reserve. So I had 2 to 3 years approximately of age of credit. My total credit limit was something between 25 and 30,000, and they say that when you want to secure business funding and you want to be successful at it, you want to have about $30,000 of comparable credit and a couple of years of age. I was young at the time. I was only 24, now I'm 27, but yeah, that's how I was able to do it. Also, the bank that you want to go with, you want to build a relationship with. So the fact that I had all these years of a personal relationship with Chase, I've had banking with them since 2015. I've had the first credit card with them since 2018. I just got approved for the second Sapphire Reserve credit card. I was paying them a yearly fee for that credit card. All of those things played a role. I built up my relationship with Chase and I was able to secure the funding. The only problem was, again, I didn't put the right things on the business credit card application. And this is bringing us to the second point, is you need to have a business that has maximum capability for fundability. I know I just came at you with so many illities, but let me explain. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have the first point, which is get immaculate credit, don't worry too much about that. I want you to watch the rest of this video. And if you have more than just one late payment or one bad account, and it's just really, really bad and you're in like the 500-600 credit score and you need help, hit the link below And my team is specialized in helping people get funding even when they have bad credit. And we help you get prepared to get really good funding by helping you fix your credit. Hit the link below and book a call with us so we'll help you out. So let's get back to point number 2. You need to make sure that your business is primed for funding, the maximum amount of funding. So what does this mean? Well, 1, you need to make sure that your business has some kind of presence online. So make sure that you have a website, Google My Business page, everything that you can to make your business look legitimate. Number 2, have a 1-800 number. Now, this is not a requirement, but the more things that you can do to make yourself seem like a legitimate business, the better. And you can get a 1-800 number for like $1 or $2 a month by connecting your business to Twilio. Very simple. And number 3, this is the most important thing. Make sure that your business's NAICS code, which is the nature of your business, is something that is considered a low risk to the banks. I'm going to put a list of low risk NAICS codes over here, and there's so many other ones, but this is the general list that I recommend. Even if you have nothing else besides good credit and just this, and none of the other things that I mentioned for making sure that your business is primed for funding, and you will most likely get approved for a very good limit. Of course, that also depends on the bank, but you get the point. Also, I want to make a really quick point here. A lot of people say that you need to build up your business credit profile in order to even get started with getting business funding. And I want to tell you that that's not really true. You can pretty much get up to like $300,000 in business funding without having any business credit profile, to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously, the more age that you have in business, even if you don't have much of a business credit profile, if your business is 1 year old, 2 years old, and up to 3 years old, that's one of the best things that you can do. To get up to $300,000 in business funding, you really don't need a business credit profile. As long as your personal credit profile is good and your business is doing really well. And then if you also have documentation, if you're watching this and you have tax returns that show that your business is making profit and you have really good revenue coming in and you have really good looking bank statements, I mean, you're completely golden. But even without all of that, no business credit profile, just a year or 2 of business age, you can get up to $300,000 in business funding. Very, very easily. I mean, you can use me as an example. I did that. I got $166,000 in business funding, and I really, to this day, I don't really have much of a business credit profile. Now, if you want to start getting into the millions, if you want to get SBA loan approvals, if you want to start doing really big things, and you want to get really big funding, then yeah, you do need to build up your business credit profile, because then you're going to start looking into something called corporate credit. And that is when the banks are going to start looking at your business credit profile more so than your personal credit profile, because then there becomes a point where your business and personal credit profile becomes split and you're no longer personally guaranteeing the debt. The reason why when you're trying to get that first 100, 200, 300K of business funding, it doesn't really matter if you have business credit, is because they're personally guaranteeing your personal credit report. So when they say unsecured business funding or unsecured credit cards, it's not really true that it's completely unsecured. The one thing that's securing that funding is your personal credit profile. If you start missing payments and start doing all this type of bad stuff, yes, it's going to affect your business credit profile first. But if you start to completely default on that business credit, then they can go after you personally. So yes, something is being collateralized, and that's your personal credit. You're going to start having dings, collections, charge-offs might start showing up on your personal credit profile. So you got to be careful with the first 100 to 300K of business funding, but you get the point. You do not need to build out your business credit profile to secure that first round of funding. The last thing that's really important that you need to look at is business age. What you could do if you have a brand new business and you have a little bit of money that you're willing to spend, you can buy something called an aged corporation. Again, this is something that we can help you with. Hit the link below. You can schedule a call with us. We can help you find an aged corporation. Basically, what an aged corporation is, a corporation that has been shelved, not been used, inactive, but it has built up some age. And age in credit is a very, very powerful thing. And let me explain to you why. Remember at the beginning of the video, I mentioned to you that most recently I got about half of my business funding from just one play. Yeah, that's because my business has aged out, and at this point it's about 3 years old. It's a little over that actually. And the $75,000 play that I got approved for was the most recent play. So the amount of funding that you're going to get over time starts to go up. And again, that was no doc. So age is really, really crucial in this game. So now let's get to the fun part. I'm going to break down exactly what makes up my $166,000 of business funding. And I'm going to mention some of the mistakes that I made along the way, because I could have secured a lot more than $166,000 in business funding from just the same credit products that I have now. I could have just maximized them further. And I'm not talking about brand new funding. I'm talking about what I currently have could have had much higher limits. So let's get to it. March of 2022, I got the Chase bank account and the $3,000 limit business credit card. At the time, I put the exact NAICS code that I was operating in, which was software. I was building a software, so I told them that I'm operating a software. That is where I messed up and got the lower amount of funding than I was supposed to. But also my business was about 6 months old, so a lot of things working against me at the time. It was a knowledge barrier and because I had the low age in business. But what saved me and got me the approval in the first place was because I had the relationship with Chase over all of those years. So that's a huge recommendation I have for you guys. Go to the banks where you have the relationship with the most first. The second card I got sometime in the summer, I believe it was July, was the Amex Blue Business Plus card. And with this card, I got an automatic approval of $17,000. And then what happened was I started getting really excited. I started putting a ton of spend on that card. And I was like, you know what? I keep getting approved. I'm 2 for 2. So let me go for another Amex business credit card, because they have 2 0% interest business credit cards, because that one was also 0% interest. And what I went for was and I'm looking at it right now, was the Amex Blue Business Cash Card. Also an automatic approval, but this one was for a measly $2,000. So unfortunately, I got a little ahead of myself, probably applied a little too early, and I got beat up for that. Probably should have waited, probably should have put some spend on it, should have paid it down, built up my relationship with Amex, because that was my introduction into the Amex ecosystem. Put a little too much spend on it, paid not enough down, and went for the card a little bit too early. So that was a little mistake there. You got to be careful. Build up your relationship with the banks first, and then go for the new cards. Now, number 3, I started doing some business. The business started working. I started moving along, and I was paying down the debts, but I wasn't able to pay it down fast enough because it's a software company. You're first building up the MVP of it, and then you have to pay all these really expensive developers, which I had, and I had some really big issues with my developers, and that was part of the reason why the company failed. So you got to be careful when you hire people. But I had to pay this developer really, really aggressively, and I was bringing in the clients slowly. I was running advertising through TikTok ads and stuff like that. So I was spending on TikTok, and I was doing all this spending, bringing in about a quarter of what I was spending in revenue. So I wasn't able to pay this stuff down fast enough. So I needed a 0% interest credit card, which I could balance transfer these Amex and Chase balances over to. So what I went for was a US Bank business credit card. And unfortunately, this business credit card only gave me a $1,000 limit. Fortunately, I still had a few months of 0% left on the old cards. And with US Bank, it's kind of a relationship bank. I should have probably opened up a bank account with them, put some revenues through that bank account, and then applied. But I kind of went a little ahead of myself, 0 relationship, opened up the account. Whatever. I put some spend on it, and then guess what? What I did was I maxed out the $1,000, paid it down in full, and then automatically they gave me a $6,000 limit. They just raised it by themselves. I didn't even have to ask them, they just did so. What a lot of people don't know is that US Bank is actually underwritten by a company called Elan Financial, and they actually bought Elan Financial recently. So now US Bank is underwritten by Elan Financial, and then there's also a bunch of Elan Financial cards across many different small banks. So that's another thing. Then what I did was I went for a small bank called Berkshire Bank, also underwritten by Elan. And this one was 18 months of 0% interest business funding because I needed longer terms at the time. So I started coming up to the point where I was like, you know what? I like the 0% interest business funding, but I need a little bit of a longer term. Only got approved for $3,000 because, again, my relationship with Elan Financial wasn't very strong yet. I only showed them that I was able to handle about $1,000. And I think my US Bank card at the time already had some utilization on it. So $3,000 limit there. So let's calculate this up until this point. We have about $31,000 of business funding. And this is across the Chase business card, the 2 Amexes, the 2 Elan Financial cards. So this is 5 products to get $31,000. So you're going to start to see how the business funding ramps up as you build up your age. Next, what I did. I knew that I needed some higher limit funding. My business was not doing very well because software is very expensive. You have to run it my business was not doing the greatest. I mean, it was really ramping up in terms of customers, but the expenses are incredible with software. But that's the thing. Once you get to a point where you really get your product right, and then you start bringing in customers that stay and you can retain them, your company could start to explode. The problem was I didn't have the right team, and I also was starting to get hit by some really, really interesting laws, brand new laws. And just, a little side note, my software was in the SMS marketing space, and SMS marketing got super hard hit in the last year or two with these very, very annoying laws. And it just completely crashed and burned my business. But anyway, let's get back to it. So I needed to transfer the balances of some of the cards that were running out of 0% interest, especially the really old ones at this point, which were the Amex cards and the Chase card. So I went back to Elon Financial. I had already built up a history at this point with them between those two cards. They already raised my limit on one of them. They approved me for a second one. I was paying down the balances, not to zero, but I was putting spend on them, paying them down, putting spend on them, paying them down. And I went for another card with a bank. And mind you, I'm in New York. So I applied for a card with a bank called Bank of Mississippi. And I got approved for a $25,000 limit. The only issue with this card was that it was 0% interest, but only for 6 months. So the limit was really high, and it was 6 months of 0% interest. So, it's a really catch-22, a little bit of a trap if you don't make the thing work or your business work. So you got to be careful with that. So I got approved for that, moved some balances over, and then I was like, you know what? I still need a little bit more to move the rest of the balances over. I still had a little bit more. So I was like, you know what? Let me apply for another one. So I applied for this bank that I found called BSNB, just from doing a little bit of research and digging. And they're underwritten by a company called TCM Bank, a little bit of a lesser known bank, but very similar story to Elon Financial. They just underwrite for smaller banks. Also got approved for $25,000 for 6 months of 0% interest business funding. So you can start to see how the age is really, really helping me get approved for other cards. And also I had certain knowledge. I had, a method of applying for these cards. So, I had the right NAICS code. I had the 1-800 number. I had a really nice website that explained what I did. And the NAICS code that I picked was not software related, but you could relate it to what I was doing. So I was picking a NAICS code that's considered low risk, but it was marketing. And you could say that my software was in the marketing niche. So they couldn't, even if the underwriters checked my software company or my website, they couldn't say, oh, this is really a software company, which is high risk. It's attributable to a marketing company. So I was able to get away with it that way. So you got to really make sure, my business fit this NAICS code somewhat, and then pick the one that somewhat fits that's also low risk. You don't want to go for the high risk one that's also related. So yeah, that increased my funding from $31,000 to $81,000 to be specific. And I had those cards for those 6 months, and then things really started crashing and burning in my business. And I got to a point where it was starting to get really, really hard for me to pay down these balances. And thankfully, I started this business at the time, which was helping people secure funding, and just doing consulting and helping people secure funding has been able to help other people grow their businesses and has been able to help me scale up the money that I was making, thank God. So I was able to pay down some of the balances, but I needed something that was a little bit more long-term. Paying down over 50 grand is just, it's a lot. So I was like, you know what? I need something bigger, and I need something that's longer term, because these 0% interest cards, while they may give great limits if you're applying for them correctly, these terms are really short. So you got to make sure that when you're applying for these 0% interest cards, that you're applying for them for the right reasons. If you're trying to do short-term things like running some ads with them on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, and then that after your sales cycle, you're going to be able to pay back those cards in 3 to 4 months, then those 0% cards are amazing for that. But if you want something that's a little bit more long-term, then you want to go for something called a business line of credit. And that's what I did. So I was like, you know what? Let me break up these payments over a few years. This business didn't make it. It failed. It's normal. It's fine. It happens. But you got to hedge your risk. You got to make sure that you know what you're doing. You got to limit your leverage. You can't take out too much debt, which is why I didn't maximize the funding as much as I could have. I could have went for a lot more lines of credit, and I didn't. But this is where it gets really interesting. This is the part that I was telling you guys to wait for. This is the 75,000 play that I'm coming up on. So I went and I started researching some relationship managers on LinkedIn for banks that I knew gave really high limit business lines of credit with no docs. And I found a relationship manager after doing a week of digging and reaching out at KeyBank. So KeyBank operates in only a few different states, so you have to make sure that you're within the state. to get secure funding from KeyBank. And I got an amazing relationship manager, and this person was able to secure me a $50,000 business line of credit within like an hour of me applying. And all they asked me for was my articles of organization to make sure that my business was over 2 years old. So again, just showing you how powerful age is in this funding economy. And they asked me for my personal ID just to prove that I am who I am and I'm at the address that I'm saying that I'm currently living at. So I got approved for the $50,000 business line of credit. And then the representative said, why don't you apply for a business credit card? And I was like, you know what? It won't hurt. Just in case, maybe I want to run some ads on some new business that I want to run, like this one, for example. Let's get that $25,000 card. Relationship manager applies for it. Again, I'm approved for it in an hour. So I went from $81,000 of business funding and I was able to add $75,000 more on top of that. And that brings us to a $156,000 total. Around that time, 2 months ago, I also applied for a Chase business credit card for about $10,000. So the grand total now is at $166,000, and that's where I am now. So moral of the story is you could secure business credit up to like $300,000 if you're putting in the right place. You don't need to have any documentation in order to get hundreds of thousands of dollars of business funding. 2, make sure that you're funding a business where you did as much research as you could and you know to the best of your ability that you're going to be able to pay back this debt and make a profit. And if you can't, make sure that number 3, you are limiting the amount of leverage that you're exposed to. At any given time, I did not let my balances go up past $50,000. I really tried hard. I mean, the upper limit was like $55,000 because that was just my risk appetite. The business started having some trouble because of the laws and because I had a bad software development team, and I started losing some clients, and now I'm at a level of debt that I can manage. If I go and build another business that's very service-based and I don't have to run ads and I don't have to spend a lot of money in order to build it, then I'll be good. I'll be able to pay that $55,000 back. And now that it's on a very long-term scale and I can pay back this line of credit over many years, I'll be okay. The payments are broken down really small. So you gotta make sure that you're being careful with the amount of leverage that you're taking and that you have the risk appetite for that, and that you made sure that you did your research and made sure that this business, to the best of your ability, is going to be profitable. So again, if you want help to secure some business funding, hit the link below and book a call with my team. If you like this video, give it a like. And if you learned anything and you got any golden nuggets out of this video, leave a comment and tell me what you learned. See you on the next video.